I'm going to get it started off by asking Professor Khan to, please, if you could talk to us a little bit about the rise of religious nationalism in the Islamic world, and how has it diminished human rights and democracy in those countries? What ideas might you have for us here so we can help push back against this danger?
Thank you very much, Fatima, for that comprehensive introduction. And I want to thank JAMAAT, as well as Walter Ruby and Fatima and Ms. Morgan for hosting this event and also working so hard. I am familiar with how much work they have put in to organize this event. What I'm going to do in my brief presentation is talk to you about the kinds of how religion and politics mix in Muslim societies. I'll also then talk to you about specific examples of Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan. And then I will talk about what the consequences of religious nationalism in the Muslim world is, and perhaps even if there's time, suggest on what we can do about it. One of the things that we all must understand is that since the rise of what we call as Islamic movements such as the Ikhwan and Jamaat Islami, or the rise of political Islam and the Iranian Revolution in 1979, there is a view of Islamic political theory which essentially believes that secularism is un-Islamic, which means that religion and politics cannot really be separated, because an Islamic polity is one where Islamic law is essentially implemented, and therefore religion and politics cannot be separated because policy, politics, and the public sphere is infused by religious values. However, there are those who have alternative views. There are those who even talk about Islam and democracy, like yours truly. And then there are those who have actually written books on Islamic secularism. So even though the idea that an Islamic polity is one where Islamic laws are implemented, even enforced upon everybody, is at the moment, unfortunately, a dominant view among those who advocate for Islam in the public sphere. It is not really implemented in many parts of the world, and alternative views continue to survive. The only country which was born as a result of religious nationalism in the Muslim world is Pakistan. In fact, there are only two countries which were born that way, Israel and Pakistan, both within a few months, 1947 and 1948. The idea of religious nationalism was that people belonging to this particular religion, in the case of Pakistan, Muslims in South Asia, and in the case of Israel, Jews, the global Jewish diaspora, they needed a homeland where they could live safely without domination from, in the case of Jews, from Christians, and in the case of Muslims, from Hindus, and so they needed a separate homeland. So the idea was to create a country for people who belong to a particular religion, without identifying the nature of the architecture of the polity, and therefore it was possible in early days to think of Pakistan as a liberal democracy where the majority of the citizens were Muslims. However, two trends have developed since. One is the recognition that there are that movements which want Islamization of countries. So you have seen Islamization of Pakistan. So even though Pakistan was created in the name of Islam, it was not seen as Islamic enough, and there have been waves and waves of Islamization. And you could argue that Afghanistan under Taliban, if it survives and endures, this could be another country with a new kind of Islamic or Muslim nationalism, which we could argue is Pashtunistan, or for that matter Talibanistan, or whatever you would like to call. But it is also a combination of religion and ethnicity. And then of course we have national religions. So you have an Islam that is Pakistani Islam, you have an Iranian Islam, a Saudi Islam. So for example, the punishment for blasphemy, and if you are following the news, there is a horrendous episode that took place in Pakistan in the last couple of days where a person was dragged and killed and burnt on the accusation of blasphemy. So there is this trend also where different countries have different interpretations of Islam, and we have to recognize the diversity. So the Islam practiced it by the Taliban, where women are banned from university education is not the Islam that is practiced even in other conservative countries like Saudi Arabia. Most recently, Saudi Arabia denied a visa to the Hajj minister of Taliban because the Taliban are not allowing women to go to school. So Wahhabi Saudi Arabia is horrified by the gender bias that is being shown by the Taliban. So we have to recognize that there is this diversity. So what is the consequence of this kind of religious nationalism? It is the same whether it is Hindu nationalism, Jewish nationalism, Christian or Muslim nationalism. It does very broadly, let's say two things very broadly, and I'll identify one more thing. One, it becomes problematic for minorities who do not belong to that faith. So if you have a Pakistan which advocates a certain kind of religious nationalism, then what happens to those who are not Muslim? They get marginalized, and defending their human rights and defending their status as equal citizens becomes the most challenging task. So, for example, people keep talking about the fact that when Pakistan came into existence, both the Pakistanis, the population there was 20% Hindu, and now it's diminished significantly. What happened to them? Were they forced to convert? Were they killed? Were they forced to leave? So was there genocidal violence, or was there ethnic cleansing? So these kind of questions are raised. So it becomes very difficult in a political system which is advocating one religion, and a religion that does not necessarily defend equal rights for people of different faiths, then defending their rights becomes one challenge. The second challenge that these groups face is if there is a disjuncture between universal values and the values that they are espousing. So, for example, we believe today that all people of all genders, regardless of what gender they claim, have equal rights politically and equal rights to education. And Taliban, which now for cultural and religious reasons does not believe that, is out of sync with the rest of the world, and so is creating a huge crisis. It is not just a crisis for Afghanistan, but also for the rest of the world, which actually wants to help the Afghan population. So these are the two immediate concerns with the rise of religious nationalism: is how do we protect the rights of minorities? How do we protect the rights of Muslims in India with the rise of Hindu nationalism? How do we protect the rights of Christians and Muslims in Israel with the rise of Jewish nationalism? And the same in the Muslim world. How do we protect the rights? But in the Muslim world, you also have an additional problem where there are many sects within the Muslim community. So, yes, I'm about to finish. The third one would be that, like the Ahmadiyyas, who consider themselves as Muslims but are considered as non-Muslims by the majority community. So basically, these are the two challenges: how to protect the rights of the minorities and how to promote universal values in these particularist countries. Thank you very much.